Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette. Salutations and welcome to Movie Oubliette, the planet-orbiting podcast for forgotten fantastical films with me, Conrad, eating my own strawberries in Cambridge, UK.
Oh, wow. And me, Dan, utterly shocked to find out what the UK computer keyboard layout looks like down here in Melbourne, Australia.
We focus on neglected sci-fi, fantasy and horror films because we love teenagers going to summer camps with life-threatening consequences, cute robots and Kate Capshaw screaming her perm off. Hello, Dan.
Yes. Hello, Conrad. Yeah, I recently found out by mistake because I bought a Apple keyboard, like a computer keyboard, off Marketplace, and I took it home.
Yeah.
And I tried to use it, and all the buttons were all wrong. I kept just having all these typos. There weren't many keys wrong, just a few things, just not quite right. And I it was impossible. I couldn't type anything. And I recently sold it, and I found out it's the UK layout. So Australia and New Zealand use the American layout, and I had no idea.
Oh, wow. So this is sort of like us driving on the wrong side of the road. Is it just us?
I don't know. Apparently, because the guy I sold it to was from Mexico. So the Mexicans use the UK layout as well.
I guess it's just whichever version gets introduced first. What are the big differences? Because I mean, the only thing I can tell is that, you know, the dollar sign doesn't have a prominent place on it and the pound sign does instead.
Yes. Also, our left shift key is bigger and yours is slightly smaller, and you have an added key right next to your Z. And we don't have that. And so when I try to use the UK keyboard, I keep putting that key in, trying to use shift to capitalize anything. So just tiny things like that.
So you'll just keep typing tildes all the time.
Yeah. Like, why
I don't know
is
why
that
that's
there?
And exactly, I've never typed a tilde in my life. What is it there for?
Yeah, well,
It's just bizarre.
the British.
Oh, well. Sorry about that.
So you've been growing strawberries. That's exciting.
It is, yes. I've been growing lettuces and strawberries and peas and I mean not from seeds. I just bought plants, but I'm really pleased with myself because we did a planter and it grew.
Yeah.
And I'm now getting a crop of strawberries just when it's getting really warm. So I thought that was a win.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We always found with lettuces though, they get ravaged by slugs and snails. Like we can't keep them off them. They're just like drawn to it, like crack.
Yeah, you have to harvest them pretty quickly, and the outer layer is pretty useless. And I did almost have a slug in my salad one lunchtime.
Right.
Which, you know, as a fairly rigorous vegan, I had to pull that out and return it to the garden.
All right. Anything in the mailbag today, Conrad?
Well, we have a new patron, Nick. Hello, Nick.
Oh, hello, Nick.
Always glad to have new patrons aboard. We heard from Wicked Person on Margot Kidder, star of Sisters, and he said, I went to a Comic-Con in Toronto in 2005. Elijah Wood was downstairs and you had to pay money for that Q&A, and there was an enormous crowd in there. So I randomly looked to my left and saw Margot Kidder sitting at a table not too far away.
Wow.
I gave a slightly surprised response and our eyes met. Because we were holding eye contact, I awkwardly said, You're Margot Kidder." She smiled and said, "Yes, I am," in that familiar froggy voice I remember from the Superman movies. I said, "And you haven't aged a bit," quite sincerely. And then that familiar voice warmly said, to me, "Oh, I love you."
Oh, sounds like the beginning of a romance.
Yeah, it's a lovely memory, isn't it? He says, "I don't remember what the two of us said briefly after that, and I know it wasn't a profession of undying romantic love on her part,
okay.
but I will never forget that voice saying that to me."
Oh,
It's lovely.
Nice. That's nice.
Margot Kidder. Yes. We also heard from Chris, who helped us to understand Robert Heinlein, the author of The Puppet Master's particular style and his themes. He says, Heinlein has always glorified the brutal efficiency of totalitarian control and sacrifice without choice, while in our minds the idea of a lone soldier choosing to hold the line at the cost of his life has a romanticism to it. Heinlein constantly wrote and tried to romanticize the idea of a strong man who made the tough decisions to throw someone else's life away for the greater good. The portrayal in the movie tries to take a 90s liberal swing at the uncomfortable totalitarian mindset of the old man through Sam feeling bitter and disillusioned about the expectations of self-sacrifice by fiat. This is where the whole boob test, slaughtering the children, and Donald Sutherland's overt nastiness all come from.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I'd read that he did like the sort of old man, young apprentice kind of dynamic in many of his books, but I didn't realize that it had this underlying totalitarian not self-sacrifice, but making difficult decisions, glorification going on in it.
Right.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that comes with his sort of military background as well, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yes, that's probably what it is. Yeah. And finally, we heard from Nick on The Puppet Masters. Have never seen this, but the synopsis reminded me of something familiar. Then when Dan suggested it would work better as a series, it hit me. The 2011 sci-fi series Falling Skies. Alien invasion, weird stingray things latching onto people's spines, and a military-style will pattern. There's definitely some similarities.
Right. Yeah, I remember starting to watch that series, but I never fully got into it. I heard it is very good.
Yeah. All 5 series are on Amazon in the UK at the moment with that sort of freebie service where there's adverts in it like Tubi.
Right.
So I might check out a few episodes because it looks really interesting. 2011, so it's not like a, shitty low budget thing from the 90s.
Yeah.
So it could be good. And I noticed that Connor Jessup is in there. He's one of my favourite actors from Lock and Key, the Netflix show. Okay. Well, keep those letters coming in. We always love hearing from you.
Yeah, we love those emails as well. You can email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com. Right, Conrad, what are we going to be doing today? What is there to discuss?
Well, let me just skip on over to the Oubliette to find out. Oh, I seem to be in like a spaceship cockpit or something.
You're in space.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just feel the urge to sort of wobble about on tiptoe for some reason. Oh, what's that alarm?
I think the oxygen's running out.
Oh, no.
Quickly.
Oh, no. Well,
escape.
Oh, there's the film. It's attached to some strings or something. I'll just give it a good tug. Right. Coming back.
What's happening?
You're back.
Yes, safely back on Earth. Whew.
What do you have today, Conrad?
Well, we have a film that was chosen by our patrons from a huge stack of Blu-rays from my movie oubliette pile. It's the 1986 American science fiction adventure film SpaceCamp, starring Kate Capshaw, Leah Thompson, Kelly Preston, Larry B. Scott, Leif Phoenix, Tate Donovan, and Tom Skerritt, and directed by Harry Weiner, based on a screenplay by Clifford Green and KCT Mitchell.
Ooh, okay. So what happens in Space Camp? Camping?
Sadly not. No, a group of misfit teenagers, determined would-be astronaut Catherine, spoiled carefree Kevin, blonde space cadet Tish, and token black person Rudy, and one Star Wars-obsessed 12-year-old Max get more than they bargained for when they attend NASA's space-themed summer camp. Max's cute robot friend Jinx takes the boy's wish that he was in space far too literally and sabotages an engine test on the space shuttle Atlantis so that the kids, who, in an unlikely turn of events, are sitting in the cockpit, are unwittingly launched into space with their increasingly cranky but thankfully fully trained astronaut instructor, Andy. Now the kids will have to learn the real meaning of teamwork and each overcome a personal hang-up that was introduced in Act 1 to get back home safely, presumably before their curiously absent parents find out. Will Kevin learn how to be the responsible leader every white man is born to be? Will Catherine learn how to recover from a flat spin? And will Max master the space toilet? Find out after the break.
Yes. In SpaceCamp. Back soon.
Whoa. And we're back, and we're in the 80s again, Dan. The 1986 flop science fiction movie, SpaceCamp. Had you seen this gem before?
No, I've never seen this before. Yeah, completely blind going into this. Yeah, not exactly what I was expecting.
No?
But for you, had you seen this before? Did you see this in the 80s?
I did see this in the 80s, but it wasn't one that I had on my, I often talk about my shelf of videos that I would go to on a Sunday evening before going back to school.
Yeah.
This wasn't one of those because it wasn't exactly sort of a escape into a wondrous world. It's more of a disaster movie. It's more along the lines of other space rescue things like Apollo 13 or Gravity.
Yes, exactly.
So it's more of an ordeal than an exciting escape. So yeah, it didn't quite hit me in the same way, I don't think. So I knew of it, I'd seen it, but I didn't keep a copy of it on my VHS shelf.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, yeah, these kids go to space camp. So this is a thing that doesn't exist in New Zealand or Australia as well. This kind of camp culture where they're not actually camping. They're just going to a thing and it's called like band camp or space camp or whatever camp. It seems to be like this training facility for like kids to become astronauts because they're training them to work in the space shuttles and with zero gravity. It's strange. It's something so alien to me.
Yes.
Pun intended, I guess.
Yes, no, same here. There isn't like this summer camp culture here in the UK. We have actual camping, like the Cub Scouts and things like this.
Yeah, in the bush with tents and terrible food. But not space camp where you go to NASA and you learn about rockets and robots and stuff.
No, it's a real thing. It started in 1982 in Huntsville, Alabama, and the goal was really to help youngsters with maths and science skills by appealing to their interest in space. So they were learning about astronomy, aviation, and robotics, but really they were learning about engineering and physics and that sort of thing, but just in an engaging way. And in the film, it seems like they're going to be there for weeks.
Yeah.
But I looked it up recently, and it's only 6 days. It's still running, but it's only 6 days. So I was a bit disappointed,
So it's still a thing.
It is still a thing. It was so popular in the 80s that they were able to open 2 more facilities, one in Florida and one in California, but they closed in 2002 due to lack of interest.
Right.
So they've gone.
Yeah. I mean, the whole space popularity and interest in America is very America-centric. In movies how, kids go on about, oh, I want to be a fireman or an astronaut when they grow up. Like, no one wanted to be an astronaut growing up in New Zealand or Australia because there's no space program in these countries.
No.
So it's not something that's exposed to us. Whereas in America, you know, NASA is somewhere you can go. It's like a theme park almost.
I still think in the UK, I was caught up in the 80s as an 80s kid with the whole excitement about space and the space shuttle.
Sure.
It was an exciting time.
Right.
And then Challenger.
Yeah.
Which was sort of the 9/11 of my childhood. It was a huge deal when Challenger exploded. And very, very sad and shocking.
Yeah, I had to research that when researching this film, but I don't remember that. 86, the year that this film came out, probably the main reason why this movie flopped.
Yes.
But yeah, I was 3 years old, so I don't remember that.
Yes, I thought that. I was just in double digits. Yeah, I would be 10. So the shuttle program was enormously exciting, but it was very expensive for NASA, and it was very difficult to justify it to the American taxpayer after they'd been up so many times.
Yeah.
So this was their attempt to popularize it, and one of the ways they did that was one of the crew members this time would be a teacher, Krista McAuliffe, and she was going to be running science lessons live in orbit
Right.
to fascinated children. So it was this whole idea of it's no longer a military thing where they're just putting up nukes and spy satellites. It's actually something that has a social benefit that everybody can dream of being part of. Hence the popularity of SpaceCamp, because everyone thought, yay, one day I could go to space too.
Yeah.
And in the movie, you have things like the character Rudy, who is dreaming of opening a fast food restaurant in space because everybody thought that's where we were headed.
Yeah.
We were all going to be on the moon and Mars within decades and just living there. And it was going to be amazing. And then January 28th, 1986, Challenger was launched, even though it was probably ill-advised because it was so bloody cold.
Right.
And one of the O-rings on the solid rocket boosters
Yeah.
failed. And the whole thing exploded after 70-odd seconds.
Wow.
And everybody was watching live.
Oh my God.
Everybody.
Oh my God.
So it was sort of like 9/11 in the sense that you're watching a disaster happen live on television. It's probably one of the first examples of that.
Wow.
Yeah. So SpaceCamp, the movie, was probably hoping to capitalize on this, popularity amongst kids and the teacher in space.
Man.
So they're making the movie in 85,
Yeah.
waiting for this mission to go up, and then disaster. And then this movie limps out in 6th place
Yeah.
in June of 1986 behind Top Gun, Raw Deal, Cobra, Poltergeist 2 and Short Circuit, and only grossed 10 million
Okay.
on a budget that's reported somewhere between 18 and 25. So
Wow.
it bombed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so when did the Challenger disaster happen?
So that was January of the same year.
Oh, that's the worst timing.
Yeah.
Holy.
They waited 6 months in the hope that people will have recovered from their grief and still find space and the overall mission inspiring.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
But it's a little bit too close to home, though. You've got a rocket accidentally launch into space with problems happen on the shuttle with the oxygen running out and just a bunch of kids trying to navigate this shuttle. That is too soon and too close to what actually happened with the Challenger.
It is, yeah. And at one point at the end, Tish, during the re-entry scene, she screams, "We're burning up," because their angle of entry is wrong.
Yeah.
Which ages poorly as well because of the disintegration on re-entry of the Space Shuttle Columbia on February 1st, 2003.
Oh,
So, yeah, there's a lot about this that is unfortunately quite prescient.
Yeah.
Because it's a solid rocket booster problem that causes the accident in this movie too.
yeah.
So, a difficult background for this movie.
Yeah. Did you find this movie seemed to be almost like a response movie? Like it seems very of the time culturally. It's kind of riding on the coattails of Star Wars being popular. There's lots of Star Wars references in this movie. The Jinx robot is very similar to R2-D2.
Yeah.
It seems to be like a reactionary, like, ooh, all these trends, let's put them in this movie. yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
And it's bound to be popular.
Yeah, there are a lot of tropes and cliches and things that are very popular and of the time that seem to be packaged up in this movie.
Yeah.
And you've got the cast as well. I mean, Kate Capshaw is just coming off the back of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yes.
Leah Thompson had just been in Back to the Future when she signed the contract for this movie.
For some reason, I forgot who Leah Thompson was in Back to the Future. I thought she played the girlfriend. Obviously not. She plays Marty McFly's mother.
Yes.
So she plays like the present day mother, so with old makeup on to make her look older, and also back in the past, the mother in the 50s. Was it 50s?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So she's an actress I don't think I've seen enough of her in stuff. I mean, we've seen her in Howard the Duck.
Yes.
And obviously she was in all the Back to the Future movies, and Dennis the Menace, I do remember her in that, and The Little Rascals, but I don't really know her anything else.
I think a lot of her work now is Christmas movies and TV stuff, I
okay.
think, these days.
Yeah.
But she's a lovely actress, I think.
She's great. I mean, she plays the girl next door character so well. She's got that kind of very, not ordinary, so she's still beautiful and stunning, but she has that very relatable face.
Yeah, she's supposed to be plain in this, I think, because at one point Tish offers to give her a makeover.
Yeah, of
but
course.
she demurs, which, yeah, I find odd because I think Leah Thompson's very beautiful. But
That's just movies anyway.
Yeah.
That always happens. It's like, oh, I'm so plain. It's like, you were the most beautiful person that I've ever seen, kind of thing. Yeah. Or like, they just put some glasses on them and then they're not pretty, and then they just take the glasses off. It's immediately, wow. Like, you looked the same before. You just had glasses on.
now, probably the biggest casting quirk, we have a 10-year-old Joaquin Phoenix,
Yeah.
here credited as Leaf Phoenix.
Yeah. I was very surprised to see him in this movie. I had no idea he started off as a child actor, because I think the first movie that I noticed him in was Signs.
Right.
Which
crikey.
came out in 2002, which is like much later. And I think he was in Gladiator as well in 2000.
He's great in Gladiator.
But yeah, that's when I first sort of noticed him in Signs. I saw Gladiator much later. And then now he's just like
Huge.
pinnacle of great actors.
Yeah.
So it's astounding to see his modest beginnings as this little kid playing Max in this movie. This kid that kind of causes everything, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's sort of the instigating factor to everything. But it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. You've got the Kevin character sort of forces his way into the blue team just because he's attracted to Catherine. They sneak out at night on a date, and Max's robot blurts out where they are when Zach and Andy come to investigate. And they blame Max for that, and it's not really his fault that
I
Jinx
know.
blurts
Yeah.
this out. So it's kind of feeble, the first sort of half of the movie. But I kind of like it because the characters are sort of likable.
The characters are. They are. And they do kind of subvert stereotypes as well. Because you've got a lot of very strong female characters to start off with. So you've got Catherine, played by Leah Thompson, and Kelly Preston's character. Tish comes across as this real sort of 80s, like, mall rat, but she's really smart.
Yes.
Like, she can remember everything she reads, which is like another sort of breaking stereotypes. You've got the black character that wants to learn. He wants to get away from his cultural stereotypes. And also the teacher, Andy, the fact that she's a woman and she ends up being in the shuttle and having to sort of navigate it home. I do think they're trying to push the boundaries of what is kind of expected in characters in movies, especially a kid's movie.
Well, yeah. I mean, and so many women have been inspired by it. I mean, we can talk about the women in space aspect because it's a very strong theme. And Leah Thompson talks quite movingly about being at a movie convention, answering questions on a panel for another another movie, and somebody who works at NASA standing up and thanking her for her role in SpaceCamp because it inspired her. And it was just because she could see a strong, intelligent, driven woman who arrives in a biplane at the start of this movie in a flight suit and is absolutely determined to realize her dream.
Yeah.
The thing that I find worrying about it is the whole question about her ability to lead, which is not presented as positively, but I don't know if that's about her gender or if it's just about Catherine.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like it doesn't do the thing that I do get annoyed at, where like the man swoops in and saves the day at the end, because that doesn't happen.
Well,
like Kevin doesn't do a lot, actually.
there's a key moment in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scene where Kate Capshaw is unconscious and tethered outside the shuttle and NASA is bringing it down on autopilot. And unless they interrupt it, she will die on re-entry. But if they interrupt it, they don't know whether any of them will survive, which I thought was really tense.
It was.
But the thing that's interesting is watching Kevin's growth, because Catherine freezes. She can't make a decision.
Yeah.
And Kevin steps forward.
That's right.
And switches off the automatic pilot and then issues commands to everybody, which Catherine praises him for later when he has a weak moment and thinks, I've just doomed us all. I don't know what I've done. And she says, no, you took responsibility for all of us and I couldn't.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you a good commander. So on the one hand, I'm disappointed for her realizing that she's not going to be a good leader. But on the other hand, I do love watching Kevin grow, especially if you think where he came from. When he shows up in a Jeep that his parents have bought for him to trick him into going into SpaceCamp, he's clearly from a wealthy family. He's very privileged. His self-stated mission in life is to not take anything seriously and just enjoy himself. He doesn't want to be the commander. So Andy picks him over Catherine to teach Kevin responsibility. And she's trying to teach Catherine that she will be passed over by men. And I know that that's what they're aiming for, because Andy's character makes a comment to her husband about being passed over for a shuttle mission by a man who gets airsick in cars.
Right.
So I know that that was a theme, but it's never explicitly stated that that's what she's trying to do. All she says to Catherine when Catherine confronts her about why are you being so hard on me all the time is, you are special and you are going to go up. And so you need to be the best of the best. So she's driving her to be better, which is great. But I also think she's teaching her that you will be passed over by men who are not qualified.
Oh, really?
I think she is.
Oh, I
me,
don't know.
maybe.
I think I'm a bit more hopeful that that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, the structure of this film is quite strange as well, because you have a good half of the movie, I think it's like 49 minutes.
Yeah, it is.
Before they actually launch into space. So it's 49 minutes of basically a coming of age kids movie with all these kids interacting with each other and, you know, overcoming their grievances against one another and sort of becoming more of a team, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the movie is just space. They're in space. And it's essentially Gravity or Apollo 13.
Yeah.
The second half of the movie. So it's quite strange, like two quite different movies glued together.
You're right. I mean, one thing I take issue with is you say they resolve their differences. I think actually the first half of the movie sets up all of their differences.
That's true.
So there is a power dynamic struggle between Kevin and Catherine, even though they're attracted to each other. She doesn't take him seriously because he doesn't care about anything. He mocks her because she's so driven. When they're in the simulator, simulating sort of an issue on the space shuttle, it falls apart spectacularly.
Yeah.
Because Catherine's not willing to let other people do a job she wants to do, everybody's job. He's not willing to take responsibility for everyone and intervene. So it just all falls apart into a shambles. And on the back of that, they're launched into space and then they've got to learn how to do it properly, because if they don't, they'll die.
They'll all die. Yeah. I mean, that aspect of it was like, oh, holy shit, we've just stepped it up a few notches from just being a kid's movie to being a disaster movie where everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah. It is essentially 45 minutes of setup where everyone has problems with themselves or each other. And then the second half of the movie, in space, is resolving all of those differences and problems.
Yeah.
It did feel a little bit like script writing 101. This is how to write a movie. Like it did kind of tick a lot of boxes that I can imagine, students in filmmaking being like, these are the things you need. Like it was going through like a binder of, this is how you write a script.
But for all that, it works
It does.
quite well. Because, I mean, a lot of times you can see the cogs moving. Like, as soon as you see Catherine failing to figure out how to get out of a flat spin, because she's in that horrible thing where there's 3 concentric rings and you're sort of spinning around in a chair and you have to try and get it under control. I mean, I would just lose my lunch immediately.
Yeah, I know.
But as soon as she's in that and she's struggling with it, you think, well, that's going to come up later in the movie.
I know.
For sure.
I mean, yeah, it's the whole like Chekhov's rifle kind of thing where like you've got all these like problems that are going to be coming up later on. Like every single character has their own personal challenge that they have to overcome when they're in space.
Yeah. And I like Kevin's character development the most because even before the scene where he takes that crucial command decision and takes responsibility, you have scenes like the one where Max is freaking out outside the shuttle and he calms him down by pretending to be Obi-Wan Kenobi and appealing to his Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, that's right.
There's the scene at the end where Catherine's doubting her ability to land the shuttle and Kevin appeals to her sense of competitiveness by pretending he's going to do it himself. So you see him using his undeniable charm to motivate and help other people rather than just amuse himself, which is a long cry from the barefooted, carefree wastrel we saw at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, just interested in girls. I just had a thought in terms of Catherine's growth, because I think she does have growth in terms of in the way that she learns to work as a team, because she, at the start of the film, she is very independent, she is very headstrong and thinking that she knows everything. So in that sort of the shuttle simulation, when the wires go all crazy at the short circuit with Rudy, and she goes back and she does it herself instead of letting him fix it because that's his job. She goes and tries to do it herself. And so when they're in space and Rudy is like, no, it's this color for the pipe, for the oxygen tank. I know it. And she says, no, it's this color. But then he's right. She's kind of come to realization that she should just let everyone do their job. She doesn't have to do all the jobs herself. She is part of a team.
Yeah, and she needs to trust the capabilities of other people.
Exactly.
So I feel bad for Catherine's character because she seems to spend the whole movie just learning through humiliation.
Well,
it's great character growth for her and she's better and she does save them all and land the shuttle at the end. So
yes,
she does get her chance to shine. But at the same time, I'm just slightly worried that it unwittingly sort of reinforces the notion that a woman is not leadership material, which I think it isn't. I think it's just Catherine isn't great leadership material, but it's just unfortunate that it
comes across
to be
like
her.
That. Yes.
I don't know.
I think there is good intention, but yes, I do agree with you there.
I think there is.
Yeah.
I think it unconsciously does a few things, reinforcing the white male hegemony. I mean, there's also, you mentioned about Rudy, he's talking about how some other guys in his class questioning his interest in science, and it feels like, is he putting on more of a stereotypical African-American vernacular when he's doing impersonations of his classmates? And I don't know whether that plays into this whole conservative notion that African Americans would do better if they just tried harder, and that there isn't any kind of institutionalized lack of opportunity that they have to overcome. It's just they just need to study hard. I don't know. It might play into that. But again, I don't think it's intentional.
No,
I think it's just one of these things that's ingrained into the society. So it's just reflected out without them even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't get a lot to do, Rudy, does he really? Apart from that one moment you mentioned.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. But I mean, you can't have everyone doing a whole lot.
No.
Everyone has one thing, pretty much, that they all do.
Yeah.
You've got Tish with the Morse code.
Yeah.
Again, always with the Morse code with these types of movies. Where all technology fails, there's always Morse code, always. And you got Max outside being the only small person to fit through and retrieve the oxygen tanks.
Yeah, I have questions about that. Surely the suit is the same size and it's the suit that's the problem?
Yeah.
Andy can't get her head and her backpack through.
Yeah.
So Max goes out because he's a kid and he can
Yeah,
fit. But
and the-
his suit is the same
Yeah,
size.
yeah. The
I don't
helmet's
get
the
it.
same size. The backpack's the same size. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I don't know.
It doesn't
I
work.
believe it. I believe it. I mean, it's ridiculous how they make the suit smaller though, with all the belts, because it's like, would that just make it impossible to move? I'm not sure.
Maybe. Yeah, it's just lucky that Tish accessorizes so much.
Oh yeah, yeah. She comes prepared.
Now it's time for random trivia.
So, Dan, what fascinating piece of trivia did you find strapped to the Daedalus station today?
Yes. Well, Joaquin Phoenix is in this movie. Is it his first role?
It's one of his first roles. He's 10 years old, so yeah, he
Yeah.
did not have a massive career at this point.
Yeah, so I looked up Joaquin Phoenix. So he was born in Puerto Rico. I had no idea. To John Lee Bottom and Arlen Bottom, as one of 5 children. Obviously, his most famous brother, River, who sadly died, and his 3 sisters, Rain, Liberty, and Summer. And one thing I didn't know is at the time of his birth, Joaquin's parents were missionaries in a millenarian Christian religious cult called the Children of God. So when he was a young child, they did
Wow.
return to the United States, left the cult, and changed the family name from Bottom to Phoenix. And that's how he got his name.
Yes. Yeah. They're an interesting family for sure. And I think
Yeah.
River drew from that when he made the movie Mosquito Coast with Harrison Ford.
Right.
That sort of different lifestyle family living on the fringes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. It's also interesting. Joaquin Phoenix went on to play, be in that movie, The Master, which was also about a cult, wasn't it? About his weird
Right,
cult.
yeah, I
or
think
weird
so.
sort of cult leader.
Yeah. It's funny that he's credited as Leaf because I think as a child he was jealous of the rest of his siblings all having these nature-themed first names, and he had Joaquin, so he changed his name to Leaf briefly, and then seems to have reverted back again by the time he re-emerged. I think in To Die For was the next film where he was much more grown up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, Leaf Phoenix. And that's our trivia.
Yes. Can we talk about some of the visual effects on this movie? Because there's some very clear wire work happening.
Yeah.
Like very, very clear. And I'm sure it was very clear even on VHS back in the day.
Maybe not on VHS, but on Blu-ray it's painfully obvious. What's even more painful and would have been very obvious even on VHS is all of the matte lines. The rotoscoping in this movie is abysmal. It's really, really bad.
Yeah, a lot of flickering going on. And there was one point where the shuttle was coming towards the screen and you could see a shadow of the shuttle. Like, there's no shadows in space. there's no surface behind the shuttle for there to be a shadow. But yeah, some very, very janky looking outlines.
Especially around hair.
Yeah, around here, and just like lots of flickering going on and sort of morphing and of the sort of edges of people.
Yeah, it's really bad in places. It kind of undermines the believability of the situation that they're in. So the film kind of relies on the drama of the situation they're in and the likability to keep you engaged. Because, the effects, they're by a company called Van der Veer Effects, and it's not ILM, not surprisingly.
Right.
I mean, the models are good, but all of the compositing is terrible, uniformly terrible.
Yeah. Not good. Not
For
good.
the wire work, I felt sorry for them because they're inside a perfect one-to-one recreation of the upper and lower decks of the shuttle.
Right.
It's on a gimbal so that they can rotate it, so they can put the camera one way and the actors another way. And some of them are on wires and some of them are not. And some of them are just sort of, they're on what they call like pizza platters, where they're just sort of sitting on something and sort of waving their arms and legs around.
Yeah.
And Leah Thompson is a trained dancer, so she was often asked to do some of the more strenuous things
Right.
that made it look like she was floating. But a lot of them are just on tiptoe, crouched in odd positions, just waving their arms around. And of course, their hair's not moving.
Yeah,
and
it's completely still.
and
Yeah.
poor Tish, I feel so sorry for her because at one point, because she's wearing these earrings that are all dangly and she's got all these things in her hair, at one point you can see that they've all been replaced with like wire so that they can all stick out in different angles. So
Right.
she spends the whole movie with lots of wire in her hair and
Yeah,
wire earrings sticking out in different directions.
Right, yeah,
so
yeah.
that can't have been fun.
I mean, I thought it was still commendable.
Yeah.
They're sort of trying to replicate zero gravity. There's one scene where I think they pass a helmet and it floats across. It looks pretty good. But yeah, there are so many visible wires and so many times where it just looks like they were swaying back and forwards as
Yeah,
well.
they are.
It's like things don't sway in zero gravity. That's not how it works.
No. They tried as hard as they could, but yeah, it doesn't work. And sometimes I feel sorry. There's one scene where Tate Donovan as Kevin it's his emotional scene that I mentioned where he feels bad because he thinks he's doomed them all.
Yeah.
And he is in this ridiculous crouching position on the balls of his feet. And if you watch closely, his leg starts to shake violently with the sort of effort of keeping himself in that position. But I think as an actor, he just kind of just used it in his
Yeah,
performance.
right.
It just makes him look even more vulnerable. So, he ran with it and it worked. So good on him, but it can't have been fun.
Yeah.
Leah Thompson mentioned that at one point during the production, they had T-shirts made that said SpaceCamp.
That's great. I do recall Sandra Bullock talking about Gravity when she was in the movie Gravity and how there were certain scenes where she just had to kind of sway a little bit just to give the impression of like zero gravity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do feel like they're still doing it now. Obviously, they have a lot of help with CGI and other things and better equipment now because I guess they must have had to really figure it out in SpaceCamp because they hadn't really been done a lot before.
No, it hadn't. And I think the famous quote from Leah Thompson is that on day one, they were 10 days behind because they just couldn't figure out how to do any of this stuff. But you're right. I mean, the technology hasn't changed. I remember Anne Hathaway talking about Interstellar and saying that there are some scenes where she's just on one foot, just bobbing up and down.
Yeah.
Because to a certain extent, it works.
Yeah.
Still.
Because, I mean, I'm just thinking of, there are no weightlessness scenes in Star Wars, is there?
No.
The entire franchise. There's no zero gravity in any of the movies.
Leia's shot out of the airlock
That's
in
right. That's
The
right.
Last Jedi.
I mean, that's in
Yeah,
space,
that's
though,
probably the only
not
one.
within a spaceship.
No, it's pure fantasy once it gets into Star Wars.
Yeah.
So it's commendable that they tried.
Yes.
It doesn't tear me out of the drama of the predicament that they're in.
Yeah.
Or my concern for them as characters.
Yeah.
It still worked for me in terms of the drama.
Yeah, I think it does.
I think one of the reasons why the drama works so well is because of the score,
Yes.
which is by none other than John Williams.
Yes.
What did you think of the score, Dan?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's very warm. I found a lot of very warm themes, brass and strings, and there's some synth in there, right?
Yes.
Kind of some weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing like hugely memorable, but it was definitely it did a lot of heavy lifting.
It does, and I think it takes a moment sometimes to maintain that sense of wonder.
Yes.
So the first time that Andy goes out into the shuttle bay and the doors open and she looks up at space and goes on her spacewalk, and
Yeah.
John Williams is playing this beautiful, stirring, noble theme, and you think, okay, they're taking the time to really show you what this means to these characters to experience this. And I thought, oh, that's good stuff. I liked
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And you can't beat Williams for that sort of sense of wonder stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I don't think he had a lot of sort of material really to work with. Like it's not a hugely visually stunning movie.
No, no. It's a shocker to see him doing it. I mean, he doesn't do a lot of films other than Spielberg movies.
Yeah.
Especially not now. He's pretty much retired. And the only reason that he did this one, he was supposed to be working on Spielberg's musical version of Peter Pan in 1985. But Spielberg became a first-time father and he cancelled it.
Right.
So all of a sudden, John Williams was twiddling his thumbs. And Lionel Newman, the longtime head of the music department at Fox, who was retiring, suggested that SpaceCamp could be a final project that he and Williams could work on together.
Oh.
That's why Williams is suddenly scoring this random movie directed by Harry Weiner,
Yeah.
who'd never directed a movie before.
Yeah. I looked at his filmography and it's all TV mainly.
Yeah.
Is this his only kind of feature theatrical release?
As far as I can tell, yeah, this did not launch his theatrical career, but he's still making episodes for lots of great TV shows.
Yeah. I saw like Veronica Mars, Felicity, Alias, Dawson's Creek, Party of Five, all the great 90s shows.
Yeah.
So he's doing well for himself.
Yeah, he is. But yeah, not a name that I would expect to see paired with the maestro John Williams on a regular basis.
Yeah, and also it's pretty low key, the film itself, for John Williams. You know, John Williams is like grand, huge productions normally.
Yeah.
Very good score though.
The last of John Williams' scores to only come out on vinyl,
Oh, okay.
although it was on CD in Japan a few years later.
Wow.
And speaking of Asia,
Yeah.
bit of a tangent, but I would like to talk about Hideo Takamine.
I wanted to talk about this too. Yeah.
Poor Hideo Takamine. So Kevin steals his place on the blue team because he's attracted to Catherine. Nobody questions it. Nobody sends him back. Hideo never turns up again.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he got sent home. What happened to Hideo Takamine? I just feel really bad for Hideo. How about you?
Yeah, I do feel bad as well. But I mean, would he have been just kicked off SpaceCamp? Like, who was this guy?
Yeah.
We've already got you. You're already logged in.
Yeah.
You're obviously not supposed to be here. Go home. Is that what happened? Yeah. Or did they just reassign him to a different part of the program?
Maybe he's out there pretending his name's Kevin.
Maybe.
I hope so. I'm really worried that he got sent home and missed out on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm so keenly aware since starting this show with you of how poorly represented Asians are in mainstream movies.
Wow.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
They're usually the sidekick or the butt of a joke, or like Hideo Takamine, just get their place stolen from them by the white Aryan guy. I felt really bad.
I did.
For Hideo Takamine. So I'm going to do T-shirts that say "Justice for Hideo Takamine" and see if anybody recognizes it and knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Coming to you live from the Movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Oh, it's everyone's favorite part of the pod. The Mobley Awards is where we nominate our favorite groan-worthy Star Wars referencing parts of the film in the number of zero gravity uplifting categories.
Best quote.
My favorite quote in the movie comes from the robot Jinx, who we didn't talk about in our main discussion, but I think Jinx is improbable, irritating, badly designed, and not very cute at all. What did you think?
I didn't mind him, but yeah, a lot of similarities to R2-D2.
Yeah. Well, he has a particularly irritating voice, and his quote, which he says twice, is Max needs thermal curtain failure. Which sounds really unpleasant and something that Max should go to the doctor about.
Oh, yes. My favorite quote is an example of, I don't know, I guess often quite prevalent in 80s and 90s kids movies where you wanted the kid to have these sort of curse words, but you couldn't actually use curse words. So you've got Max saying stuff like, why don't you evaporate, laser brain? What a bunch of monkey clones. They ought to be zapped. So it's stuff like that where it's like, I guess that works, but it just sounds very silly.
Best hair or costume?
I'm sure we're both going to pick the same person.
I think so. I think Tish stands out with the best hair and costumes in the entire film. At one point, how many watches is she wearing? Like 4, 5 wristwatches on one arm. And then the other arm has got like 4 or 5 bangles. She kind of resembles the Kimmy character from Full House to me. She's got like glitter on her face at one point, and the whole big 80s perm curly hair as well. So yeah, she stands out. She's got the best outfits.
Yeah, I love it. I love her sort of Madonna outfit that we see in the bunk bed scene early on, where she's got these lacy knee-length leggings and the lacy hair tie that's just lost in the mass of permed blonde hair, and the white puffy shorts and the white vest that's tied up at the midriff to expose her belly. And she's got a SpaceCamp blue team t-shirt that she's stylishly hacked to shreds, so it's basically just a pair of sleeves connected by a neck at that point. And there's just so many accessories. You can hear her clanking from a mile away. I think she's great. I love her. It's just like an 80s explosion on one person.
Yeah, exactly.
Most 80s moment.
I mean, obviously, Tish is probably the most 80s thing in the movie. Just 80s personified. she is just 80s. That is her example of 80s Tish.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. In terms of filmmaking trends, I was going to say A Boy and his special effects creation, because we've had A Boy and his alien in E.T. and in Mac and Me, A Boy and his Mogwai in Gremlins, A Boy and his robot in SpaceCamp, A Boy and Bigfoot in Harry and the Hendersons, A Boy and his robot spaceship in Flight of the Navigator, A Boy and his AI computer in War Games. There's a lot of A Boy and his insert special effects thing here in the 80s.
A lot of similarities to Short Circuit as well, another sort of robot AI piece of technology.
Yeah.
Favorite scene?
My favorite scene in this movie is, without doubt, we've mentioned it in the main discussion, it's the manual override scene. I think that's the high point in terms of drama. I think it's palpable. The decision they have to make is horrifying. And there's a lot of character growth in there. Obviously, I have some concerns about the gender dynamics of what they're trying to say in that one. But I mean, still, I think it's Kevin's moment to shine. And I think they really pulled it off, even though the special effects are janky. I was invested. I was tense. I thought it was a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of jeopardy in that scene. My favorite scene, you will probably disagree because of all the janky special effects and obvious wire work. But I did really like the oxygen tank retrieval scene with Andy not being able to reach out, and then Max being strapped into a astronaut suit and belted down, and then he helps her. There's just so much going on. Like he grabs it, and then they put the pipe in, and she get blasted off, and she gets knocked out, and then she gets stuck outside of the shuttle as the doors close. It's a really, really, really tense scene that I was not expecting. and a kids movie with a bunch of children. like
No.
a very similar in terms of sort of risk and life-threatening situation as Gravity, but with just a bunch of kids. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Most cliche moment.
So many space cliches in this. I guess running out of air in space.
Yes.
I mean, it's very similar to like in sort of submarine underwater movies, running out of air. But they it's always like they actually run out of air or almost run out of air before they, connect the oxygen tanks back up. But yeah, it's such a cliche.
It is. Yeah, you've got to run out of air, for sure. My cliche was robots and computers conversing with each other verbally.
Oh, yes, of course.
'Cause why do they need to do that?
Yeah.
I don't know why Jinx needs to...
Because of us, Conrad.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But he does just plug himself in at one point with what looks like a cereal socket.
I know,
So,
yeah.
like a printer. But yeah, I don't know why robots and computers talk to each other verbally in these movies.
Well, I don't think it would be very riveting just seeing them plug in and just complete silence as data is exchanged.
Best special effect.
Let's be honest, there is not a best special effect in this movie.
Yeah, I would like to give some praise to Jinx. I know you'll disagree, but and Jinx does look like you can just push him over with a finger and it would just topple into like bits of Lego. But there are quite a few moving parts. He's got 3 legs that retract and they are on wheels. He has 2 arms. He has a head thing that protrudes out and spins around. There's quite a lot going on. It does look very flimsy though, but I think it works.
Okay. Yeah, there were 5 Jinxes that they manufactured, and
wow.
in a recent interview, the director says that he's been searching for them. He can't figure out where Jinx ended up. He can't find him anywhere.
Right.
So, don't know what happened to them, but there were 5 of them. Each of them could do a different thing.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just have a nomination for worst special effect.
Oh, yes.
There are a lot of them. There are
Yeah.
a lot of visible wires. There are a lot of very, very janky rotoscopes. But the worst special effect, I think, is the moment when Max is flying away from the Daedalus, and you cut to a shot of Andy in the shuttle bay, and a hand-animated shadow of Max is drawn over the top of her and the shuttle bay passing overhead.
Oh, right.
And it is janky as shit. It looks terrible. And I laughed really quite violently.
Wow.
And it took me out of the drama of the scene.
Okay.
Completely.
I need to rewatch that. I don't recall that.
Do you not? It's bad. It's
Okay.
really bad.
Favorite sound effect.
You've mentioned the shuttle bay not being great, but I did like the scene where Andy's kind of waiting for the doors to open, and the sound of it is kind of this thumping, rumbly sound. It almost sounds like she's in a submarine under the sea, underwater, like a very sort of subby, like bassy kind of sound to it. I really liked it. I thought it was a good effect.
Yeah, I did too. I think it's because they were trying to be as accurate as they could. So they were trying to convey the idea that she's not getting any high frequencies. She's just feeling the rumble of it through her suit. That's the only thing that she's getting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I liked it.
it's pretty well done. Yeah, my favourite sound is during the launch of the Atlantis, there is a shot where a bird flies by the camera, and they've taken the time to put in this bird squawky panic noise as it goes.
Yeah. I was going to mention that in the funniest moment, actually, because obviously they've used some like actual footage from the launch, so they don't have any other footage to use, and it just happens to have a seagull in it. But they make it stand out more by putting the sound effect in it. They didn't need to put that there.
No, they didn't. Maybe just some fluttering noises or something. But no, there's just this sort of... You almost want a subtitle for the bird squawk that just says, "Fuck me," or something as it goes past.
Most funniest moment.
We have mentioned this in the Patreon extended movies, but the shuttle simulation scene is quite funny in terms of Kevin in that entire scene, because he is so sarcastic and so taking the piss out of the whole simulation. And at the end where it says no survivors, and he's like, "Oh, no survivors," and the screen is revolving around. It's quite hilarious. I loved his performance in that scene.
Yeah, he's really good in that scene. There's another bit where Andy is trying to get through to Catherine to get her to get back to her post, and he just touches his headset and says, "Catherine isn't here right now, but if you'd like to leave a message..."
It's great. Such good comic timing.
It's great.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. He has real natural charm in this, and I do love his character. And I love how he learns how to use it to influence others for the better, rather than just enjoy himself.
Yeah. And that's our Movie Awards.
Hello, this is Robert Picardo, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
Okay, it's time for our final verdicts. Should 1986's SpaceCamp, all one word, be blasted out of the oubliette to be revered by space kids all over the globe, or should it be zapped by Jinx, the robot, and float back into the darkness of the oubliette, never to be seen again? Conrad, SpaceCamp, what's your final take on this movie?
Well, if I let my head run this one, I would probably say no, because it's got janky special effects. The whole premise of how the kids end up in space in the first place is ridiculous and totally unbelievable, and makes NASA look grossly negligent. The weightlessness is really janky, and there's strings everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's got a stupid robot with a really irritating voice. But
Yes.
I always let my heart rule over these sorts of things. And I still got invested in the characters despite all of that, because I think it's a really winning cast. I think Leah Thompson and Kelly Preston and Larry B. Scott and Tate Donovan are really good. Joaquin Phoenix is very young, but he's still very cute and lovable. And I was invested in the jeopardy that they were in. And I do love a good space rescue movie like Gravity and The Martian. I do love a disaster set in space. It's just, I find it really compelling because the setting is full of so much jeopardy. And I cared about them enough that when they did overcome all of their teamwork issues and get back home again, I was actually moved by it. So on the basis of that, and because I think it might actually have been quite influential on the movies that came after, I think yes. I think it's an overlooked gem that was overshadowed by real world tragedy, and it's worth rediscovering. So yeah, I would untether that sucker and let it float free.
Yeah. I mean, watching this movie, it's got all the hallmarks for me of a movie I wouldn't normally like. So it is quite wholesome. It's got all these kid characters, which I don't normally like. I find that stuff really cringy, really cliche, and mostly intolerable. And yeah, the robot is absolutely annoying. Like Jinx, no, he's a terrible, terrible character. Obviously trying to sort of ride in the coattails of Star Wars, and also with all the Star Wars references. But yes, I do really like the characters in this movie. Very, very invested in the characters. I thought they were very sort of subverting certain stereotypes. They weren't what you normally expect, especially in a movie where kids are sort of the main characters. Yes, there are some janky effects, but for the most part, really tense, terrifying situations that you're putting children. That, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to cope with that. Yeah, it's quite the ordeal. I find this movie incredibly inspiring, and it must have been incredibly inspiring for kids growing up and having an interest in the space program or science in general. I think it's trying to do a lot of things that you would not normally see in a movie. In sort of almost an educational way. It's almost like an educational movie in sort of giving good role models in that sense, that sort of sense.
That's true.
So, yeah, I kind of did enjoy this movie. I really did. And it's unfortunate of the timing of its release. And that's why it bombed so badly. But yes, I would release this movie.
Well, let's ask Hal if our patrons agree. Hello, Hal.
Yes, Conrad?
Can we have the final verdict from patrons, please?
In their infinite wisdom, our patrons voted to set the film free.
There you go.
Okay. I wasn't sure about this. I wasn't sure about the sort of consensus of this movie because it does have a lot of flaws.
It does, yeah, and it was sort of the butt of jokes a lot of the time as well.
Right.
But it wasn't unanimous. It was kind of an 80-20 split. Eddie Coulter said, I say let it drift off. I didn't care for it that much when I saw it back in 1986, and upon a revisit, my opinion hasn't changed.
Okay.
I just can't stand the robot jinx.
Wow, I don't think neither can we.
No. Surge of Cold Crash Pictures said, I'm saying yes, based solely on my third grade recollection of this film. The only astronaut film I enjoyed more at that age was Rocket Man.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And Shazilla says, despite the first two acts being cliche-ridden teenage angst and hormones, the third act managed to really build some tension and keep me interested. I was surprised how invested I got in the characters. Definitely enjoyed the rewatch. I remember liking it when I was 16 and it was new, mostly because it was a babe fest.
Right.
You can shoot me out into space any day with 1986 Kate Capshaw, Leah Thompson and Kelly Preston. Let SpaceCamp blast out of the oubliette and land safely back on Earth with the dashing Tom Skerritt at mission control to see them safely back home.
Yeah. I can imagine a lot of boys being into Leah Thompson and Kelly Preston, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you've got a blonde and you've got a brunette, so there's something there for everyone. Okay, well, I guess that means we're setting it free.
Yeah.
So it's lift off for SpaceCamp.
Survivors!
So I guess now it's time to reveal the movie we're doing next episode, Conrad.
Yes, it is. And in this case, it will be a patron's choice. We asked our patrons to nominate films this time, and we got a good selection that we picked out. We've got sword and sorcery, like The Warrior and the Sorceress. We've got horror, like House on Terror Tract and Bubba Hotep and Hiss. And we've got time travel with Time Rider and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Oh my God.
We've got more sci-fi like Ice Pirates and Flash Gordon. So yeah, lots of great stuff on there.
Let's give it a spin. Okay.
Ooh.
Where's it gonna land?
Oh, we are 80s sci-fi again. We will be doing Ice Pirates.
Oh, okay. I have not seen this movie. I think I've seen clips of it. It kind of reminds me of Space Hunter.
Yes.
Is it like that movie?
No, I think it is much more of a broad comedy,
Okay.
if I remember rightly. Now, I remember loving this as a prepubescent child.
Okay.
As for whether it holds up as an adult, I do not know. So this one was nominated for us by Christopher, and he says he's forgotten almost everything except that Robert Urich stars and that there's a castration joke that probably just worked for teenagers in the 80s. So,
Okay.
yes, that's going to be fun.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yes.
All right. Well, listeners, if you want to keep up to date with our future episode with Ice Pirates, you can follow us on all our socials as Movie Oubliette and email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
And if you want to support the show and nominate films for future episodes and vote on the outcome like our patrons did today, head on over to Patreon. There are various different levels that you can go for with various different perks. So, yeah, check that out.
Yes. We've also got merchandise at Redbubble and a YouTube channel that you can see some video essays and live panels that we were involved with. And also, if you want to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to us, that would help us a lot too.
Yeah, please do. Until next time.
Yes. Bye, listeners.
Bye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Max needs thermal curtain failure.